What's up guys, Intellitech Studios here, and today we'll be doing the full review on the Riccar Supralite. Now, for a while I mistakenly called this the Riccar Superlite, but in fact, it is the Riccar Supralite. Supralite. Not Superlite, Supralite. But in practice it sounds the same. So, this particular machine is model number RSL1A. Yes, I got that right. And this particular machine is the base model with the standard foot activated power switch, no secondary speeds or anything, and the standard handle. Although, funnily enough, every other one of these that I've seen has like a bubble design on the handle and not just a flat handle like this. So I'm not sure if this model is any different or if this top piece was just replaced perhaps, but either way, it's got a very basic, just the handle is literally just a standard small piece of sheet metal that's been bent ever so slightly with a grip stuffed onto it. I mean, it's a very rudimentary design. In fact, this piece looks like it was stolen from a satellite dish, of all things. And this is just the basic entry-level Riccar. Back when these were new, and the current version of this you can get for about $300 and change, just under 400 bucks. I know everyone complained. Well, no, I shouldn't say everyone, but there's one person in particular that complained about the cat being in the video. And yeah, I mean, if you have cats, it's gonna happen. Because little man decided that right now has to be the time that he plays with a scratching post. Isn't that right, Rocco? Yeah. Anyways, so back to the main video. This particular machine is very similar to a certain other machine from another company that might be a little bit more well known, but the point is that this is essentially Riccar's take on an Auric XL, and these machines have proven themselves to be pretty popular, but depending on where you are in the country, they may or may not be more popular than the equivalent Aurics, although they tend to not be as well known. This machine also goes by the Simplicity Freedom, as the parent company, Tacony, owns both Riccar and Simplicity. So you will see different machines with different brands depending on what district or state or even just simply what vacuum store you're in, because they very much will sometimes compete with each other even in similar markets, which is quite strange. So just note, this is the Riccar Supralite, but it in many cases could also be very similar and analogous to the Simplicity Freedom, at least in terms of this review and my general thoughts on it, although technically this is the Riccar version that I reviewed. We do have a front-facing headlight on the front, which is standard on these machines, unlike the equivalent Auric XL Classic, which does not contain a headlight, although those machines aren't available anymore. But at the time, this very much would compete with that because it has the standard handle, nothing special, and a basic foot switch. But otherwise is a lightweight 8-pound machine with a very identical setup to an Auric, where we basically have a power head with a stick and a bag strapped to it. But in the case of this, especially compared to the older XL Classics, we have a much more aggressive brush roll, and we also have a much wider diameter of spine that goes into the bag. So cleaning performance is going to be a lot better than the equivalent Auric at the time, because we have a brush roll with much stiffer bristles and a nice wood quality brush roll. Aurics tend to have very, very soft bristles. In fact, if we compare it to an equivalent Auric of the time prior to the Auric XL21 series, we actually end up with a machine that has very soft bristles. And these machines don't tend to clean quite as well as the equivalent Riccars, and in terms of usability, they are very similar. Now, the reason why I'm comparing this to a few different Aurics is because, realistically, Aurics, in most cases, tend to be more well-known. So it's a bit of a more common comparison, because you're likely going to be trying to choose between these two machines. If we compare it to the later XL21s, yeah, you can tell I've been using this one because it's in a similar shape. These newer XL21s do in fact have much denser and much stiffer brush rolls. And they also have a much wider diameter for the bag. So the XL21 platform and newer, like the Platinum, Platinum Pilot, Forever Gold, and now the Elevate Command and Conquer series are much more evenly matched to this Riccar, and in fact, in many ways, I would say are superior because they're a bit of a more refined product. The biggest reason is that these XL21s have much nicer quality motors that run at a much lower pitch and a much quieter volume. The decibel level on these Oryx are actually very pleasant, especially when upgrading from the previous classics. The previous classics can, in fact, be quite loud, but they're never usually loud enough that they require hearing protection, but they do kind of operate right on the cusp. These XL Platinums are very quiet and very pleasant to listen to. In fact, they're quite nice to listen to even if you're not using them. These Riccars, however, are a bit more screamy and a bit more guttural in terms of the way the motors sound. They do, in fact, tend to, at least for me, require hearing protection. If my voice sounds funny, I do, in fact, have earplugs in because it's the only way I can really use this machine without my ears hurting, which is obviously not good. Vacuums that are loud, frankly, as much as people complain about the EU's sort of practices, I do wish we adopted similar EU regulations, at least in terms of the sound restrictions, because once vacuums do get to be a certain level of decibels, they actually can cause hearing damage over time. And that's to say nothing about the pleasantness to run. It'd be nice if you didn't have to worry about a machine being too loud for you to actually use it without hearing protection, because a vacuum cleaner, especially a domestic one, should not require hearing protection. This one does operate right on the cusp where it just barely requires hearing protection, at least for me. If you live in a house that's a bit less echoey, or if you live in an environment where there's a bit more ambient noise to perhaps shield the sound of a vacuum, then you may be just fine with this. But for me, it is a bit of an issue with this. And that's the main reason why I don't like to use these, despite the fact that they're excellent cleaners and very lightweight and easy to push. One other issue with these is that this is the base model. It's not designed for bare floors. We have zero squeegee, zero motor speeds, zero brush roll shutoffs, and hard plastic wheels. So these are not in any way, shape, or form designed for bare floors. Carpets only. The later XL Platinums do in fact have a squeegee on the bottom that we saw earlier and a second speed. Although, as you'll see in my upcoming XL Platinum review, these still aren't the best for bare floors, not even close. So definitely only get this machine if you want a machine that can do a great job on carpets without any sort of height adjustments and without needing one, and also if you have zero use for tools, because obviously this machine has no tools. So if you buy one of these, you're going to have to pair it with some other machine to be able to use tools, like a cordless stick vac or a straight suction canister. So if you buy this, and especially if you pay full price for it, you're not done. You still have to buy another machine to supplement the tool usage. But there are decent canisters on the market that you could easily add to this if you had the budget to do so. Things like the Miele C1 and also the Simplicity Jill, with other even more low budget options if you're on a super tight budget, like the Abyssal Zing and Eureka Mighty Mite. So there are definitely options you can add to these. Riccar, to my knowledge, doesn't have any sort of first-party solution to this, unlike Auric. Although, to be fair, I haven't looked, as I literally only thought about that just now. So don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. I've never seen a compact canister from Riccar in a similar vein to the Auric Buster B, but I could be wrong. There very well may be one. So with that, there isn't much else to say other than a little comment on the general usability and maintenance of this. So I mentioned the foot switch earlier. That's kind of the first thing you notice. It is relatively easy to get to, but it's still a little bit harder to use than the one on the equivalent Auric because it sits at an angle. And this particular machine really tries to run away from you, at least on my carpets. Now, Oryx, like the XL Platinum, I have seen issues with them pulling forward a little bit, but they're usually easy enough to pull back. Now, this machine is very easy to push and pull when it's off, and it's super light. The name is not at all a misnomer. This thing is 8 pounds, just like the equivalent Auric. It might even be lighter without the cord. It definitely is not a difficult machine to push or pull. However, this thing, at least on my sort of deepish pile carpet, really loves to lunge itself forward. That brush roll is very aggressive, and it tends to yank itself forward, which is not great because ideally you want to vacuum very slowly. It doesn't matter what type of vacuum you have, you want to move the machine slowly across your carpet just like you do with a wet carpet cleaner, so that way you give the machine ample time to pull up all the dirt, debris, sand, etc. that's deep in your carpets. If you go too fast, you don't give the machine enough time to pull that stuff out of your carpet, because if it's embedded deep and you have a deeper pile of carpet, then you may need more time for the machine to pull that out. Now, it's not as big of an issue with this machine as other machines that don't clean as well, but it's still potentially an issue. And at the very least, even if that's not a concern, it's still annoying the machine really lunges forward. And I'll demonstrate that right now. So if you notice, it does differ depending on the direction of the carpet, which does kind of have a factor in it, which I'm not really sure why it would have that much of a difference in terms of how much it pulls forward. But if you notice, when I was pushing it this way, it didn't pull forward all that much. When I turned it this direction, it didn't pull forward all that much, but it did pull forward a little bit more. Then when I put it right on this slope right here, diagonally, it yanked itself forward very aggressively. So I guess my carpet is supposed to be laid in this way, I presume. It's quite strange, because while the Auric, especially the Platinums and some other of the more powerful Aurics, do tend to pull forward as well, and that is a complaint that I have with them, on this carpet, they're more consistent, and they generally tend to pull in the same way, regardless of what direction the machine's facing on the carpet. With this, there's a bit of a variance there, which that variance can make it a bit more difficult to use, because the amount of force you have to push in order to push the machine forward is inconsistent depending on what part of the exact same carpet you're vacuuming. At least in my house, with this carpet, this random Home Depot carpet, and this machine. So it's kind of a strange conundrum where using this isn't a very consistent experience. It'll pull itself forward and then other times won't. It's quite strange. Now, that could be part of the brush roll sort of being very effective and very stiff, but it's also a bit of an issue, the fact that this power switch is at an angle, which means when it is trying to run away from you, trying to push that power button is difficult. And when you try to put it in the upright position, just like the Oryx, when the second you put it upright, it will try to run away. So this is really the type of machine where you kind of have to turn it off and then put it in the upright position, which isn't ideal, because that means you're potentially leaving debris inside the chamber of the machine, and you're not letting that go through. Ideally, you would, with any machine, you would put it upright, let it run for another 1 or 2 seconds to clear out everything that's in the air path, and then turn it off. With something like this, that's difficult to actually do. So, again, it might not be a super big deal, but it's something that bothers me just a tad. One other thing that's frustrating is that I understand this is the base model, but there is no swivelable cord hooks. The cord hooks, thankfully, are metal, which is good, because I've seen the more expensive full-size Riccars have cheap brittle plastic clips for the cord that actually end up breaking over time. Same with the Simplicity models. This thing, thankfully, does not have those issues, because these are sturdy metal clips that are screwed into the main body. So these will never break. And there's also a built-in cord clip that is thankfully higher than it is on other machines, although it's not exactly handle height like it would be a C-Bell, but it's right where it should be. I am kind of annoyed there's no cord clip, because again, it looks like this piece was yanked off a satellite dish. So a little cord clip they could have added right around here that you could clip the cable onto would have been a nice addition, but they didn't go for that. And again, because these are tough metal clips, it's good because they're not going to break. That part's good, but they don't swivel. So you can't easily unwind the cord whenever you want to quickly vacuum something. You have to manually unwind it every single time. Which, again, this is the entry-level Riccar, but I don't really like this trend that more boutique and expensive brands do, where they will take features that are on basic $100, even $50 machines, and delegate them only to their more expensive and their already expensive machine lineups. It's really a bad design, because that just simply convinces consumers just to stick with their cheaper machines, because why would they upgrade to something that's double or triple the price if it has if it's missing one or two or even three or four features that their Walmart machine has? It's just something that makes no sense, and I don't understand why the vacuum industry does it. I mean, I get why they do it, because in theory, if you're already set on this brand and you want that swivelable cord hook, then you have to go to a higher end model. But it's just not smart from trying to pull in new customers, and from that perspective. Riccar's not the only one that does it. Sibo does it. Miele does it. All these companies do it, but for whatever reason, they also did it here, and it's annoying. Now, one thing that isn't annoying are the bags. We've got a little zipper that undoes this. Again, very familiar. And we have these Echo Pure bags. Now, they do make HEPA bags as well, but this has a genuine paper bag in it. And it does have a semi-decent docking system. You got this little tab right here that you can press, and the bag pops off. Now, this part, unfortunately, does get very dirty, but that is kind of part of it. There's a little lip on the bottom of this bag collar that you rest the bag into to line it up, and then you push it on until it clicks into place, which can be a little tricky to get, but it does pop on. I actually really like this docking system because it's a little bit more straightforward than the CC docking system on the Auric, which means it's unlike Auric in their modern bags. They haven't locked this out with any sort of weird like anti-backwards compatibility to make old bags not work, but it also means that it's still at least holding on to the bag in a more precise way than the basic XL commercial machines that they still sell. Those machines, the bags pop off very easy, and I've seen a lot of bags pop off and then leak a lot of dirt inside the machine. This thankfully has a better bag dock system than those, so it's not likely to happen. But unlike the CC docking system on Oryx, this doesn't have any sort of self-seal, so that is another sort of downgrade from the various Oryx, especially from the last, at this point, 15 years? Or 15 or 20 years that Oryx had the CC dock system. So I don't understand why Riccar has more sort of generic bags like that, or not generic, but more less feature-rich. What's the word? Riccar's bags don't have that self-sealing feature, which can be annoying, especially for this price point, and considering the fact that competitors do offer that. Sorry for that word salad there. For some reason, I couldn't find the word for these bags not having the sealing system that the Oryx do. Obviously, that's a bit of an issue if that's a feature you were looking for when comparing this to a newer modern Auric. One other thing about these that kind of differs from an Auric, and apologies for the comparison, but I feel like it is important, is I feel like the belt change on this is a lot easier than an Auric. You don't have to worry about a little window on the side that kind of relies on the structural integrity of the base housing being together in order to use, unlike an Auric. An Auric, you can't really replace the belt in a way that you would expect to, because the housings aren't as strong as these Riccar ones. Although these Riccar ones are much more prone to get sun faded over time, and these little clips on the back of the housing, as evidenced by mine, can in fact break. But the base plate is actually pretty easy to get to. Although I don't like the use of plastic clips, I do prefer the use of screws, because again, clips can break. So you can unclip these, which with one hand is quite difficult, and pop out this base plate. It's very, very simple. And then from here you have access to your brush roll and your belt. There also isn't very much space in here to actually get a belt on properly, so getting a belt on the motor spindle when you're replacing it can in fact be quite difficult. But other than that, replacing a belt and a brush roll is a fairly straightforward process. But the brush roll does use very, very small bearings that are prone to locking up on these. But the good news is that, unlike the Auric, because it has the clips, you can replace the belt without using any tools. So there's definitely a personal preference angle there to be had. And basically, that's pretty much it as far as the difference. This is a direct air machine just like the Oryx, so For me personally, I wouldn't recommend this machine, or the Oryx for that matter, over a more basic commercial style Bissell, because those machines are only a little bit off in terms of weight. They're just a couple pounds heavier, but they have the addition of tools. They're a bypass machine, so they're going to filter better, and also you don't have to worry about breaking a fan from sucking up anything too big like you can with these, and they're also cheaper. So I will link both the equivalent to this machine in the description and also a machine I'd recommend over it instead, because while this machine cleans great, the fact is that direct air machines, at least in my humble opinion, are not relevant in today's modern vacuuming climate. I see no reason to pick this machine over an equivalent clean air machine, as they do make clean air machines that are only a couple pounds heavier, yet you get way more features in exchange for that. And those machines are going to last a lot longer in the long term because of the fact that they're not direct air. Now the good news is that these Riccars tend to last a little bit better and age more gracefully over time than the equivalent Oryx, because the fans in these tend to be built a lot better, at least from what the limited exposure that I've seen. So that is one area, is if you're worried about longevity, the Riccars do get a slight edge over Oryx. They both are capable of lasting a very long time, especially if taken care of. I mean, after all, I've got Oryx and Riccars that are both 20, 25, 30, 35 odd years old, and they still run just fine. So they definitely are capable of lasting a long time, but for the Supralite, I think it has the slight edge because of the better quality fan. Because as much as hopefully you watching this video are good about not sucking up things like coins and nails and sticks and screws and stuff, a lot of consumers aren't. But if you didn't know, yes, direct air machines like this, and just vacuums in general, should not be sucking up things like coins, keys, nails, screws, wood chips. Larger objects are not designed to be sucked up by a domestic vacuum cleaner. So if you didn't know that, hopefully you learned something today, and maybe you now understand why your vacuums are breaking so frequently. Vacuums are not designed to vacuum up stuff like that, especially not direct air machines, because all those pieces are going through the fan. And if you break that fan, your vacuum's going to sound and work terribly. So don't do that. Dust and dirt is all these are designed to suck up. Your carpet should already look reasonably clean whenever you go to use your vacuum. Your vacuum should be designed to get the sand and the grit and stuff that's in the carpet and the crumbs that are on top of the carpet, nothing more. Isn't that right, Rocco? Isn't that right? Alright, anyways, so this was Intellitech Studios signing out with a full in-depth review of the Riccar Supralite vacuum, RSL1, or RSL1A, I think. I'm going based off memory, so that might be wrong. Either way, the modern equivalent to this machine will be linked in the description, as will be this exact machine, because if you watch this review and you decided you want this exact machine, well, guess what? I'm selling it. It's linked in the description below. So anyways, this is Intellitech Studios signing out, and Rocco is also saying his goodbyes. Isn't that right? Thank you for your input. Anyways, this is Intellitech Studios signing out. I'll see you guys in the next video. Let me know any other questions or comments you may have about this machine in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you all have a good one. Peace.